Owning your first home may feel like a distant dream, but with the right money habits, it could be closer than you think. I'm Tim Graham, and the Property Playbook starts now. Welcome to the Property Playbook, presented by hotspotting.com.au, where each episode we empower you with expert insights and trends to thrive in today's competitive property market. Today, we're talking money, how to save it, how to spend it, and how to invest it confidently. Joining me now is Glen James, the creator and host of the Money, Money, Money podcast and the brilliant mind behind the Glen James Spending Plan. Glen, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Hey Tim, I'm very well. Thanks for having me today.
That's all right. So Glen, I understand you've been podcasting since about 2018. What made you get started?
Yeah, so I came from a financial advice background. I was a financial advisor for a bit over, 12 years. And I really found when people were coming into my office, they said, "Oh, Glen, we want to invest. We want some financial advice." And I ended up, multiple times seeing couples and individuals come in. I'm like, you don't actually need financial advice. You need a budget. You need to get out of debt. You need to get your systems in order. Then we can worry about our goals. And I think that happened over and over again. And I had a really successful business. At the time in Australia, there was no real money podcast for Australians by Australians. So I took a bit of a risk, and I thought the message that I'm telling a lot of young people and older people for that matter in my local area, I'm just going to repeat that and do a one-to-many approach. So I effectively got out of financial advice and went full-time into podcasting. And my aim and goal is to encourage people, inspire people, educate people. And there's no cost to that on the podcast for them. Then they can go and get the property. Then they can go and get the financial advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Well, I must admit, the thought of budgeting doesn't sound all that exciting, but a spending plan, that would resonate with a lot of people. So where did the Glen James Spending Plan sort of come from, and how do you roll that out? Yeah,
so effectively, I think the word budgeting, I hate that myself. It's like, don't you dare put restrictions on me. I just want to live. And I think we just need some type of plan with our money. And when I had my business, I would tell clients, I can coach you face to face. We can do various meetings. It'll cost thousands of dollars and I'll help you get there. Or you can do this online course. And at the time I was charging, I think under $100 for it. It's now free. And effectively the spending plan just allows people to put all their income in, all their expenses in, work out how much it costs them to wake up of a morning, what's left over. Then we can go, okay, let's use this dry powder to attack our goals. And it really does focus on the behavioural side of money.
Yeah, okay, great. So let's talk about first home buyers. What are some of the key hurdles that they're facing? And then what are some of the tips and tricks that you can share for anybody out there as a first home buyer trying to enter the market today?
Yeah, so I think number one, obviously the biggest hurdle is the security deposit needed to get into a market, the market, or into a house or into a first home as a first investment property. I think, and we can see that the government have got various schemes, state and federal level. But my biggest thing on our podcast, for every person in our Facebook group that says, hey, I'm struggling to get into a house, we've got good incomes, but we just can't do it. There is another person who might be a bit younger, might have a lesser income, who, I've just got my first home. And this is a national audience. My podcast is a national audience. It is case dependent and location dependent. Mm-hmm. But the ones that tend to do it, they do two things. They are really, really keen on their goal.
Yeah.
And then what they do, they have their goal, they look at their spending plan, and they sacrifice. Now, that sounds really dumb, boring, and not sexy. But for a lot of people who manage to get into their first home, the sooner that they've done that, I've noticed some key trends. They've been ultra focused. Mm-hmm. They haven't had new cars and car loans. They've had a really good system and structure. And then sure, obviously there are cases where people get help from parents and use other schemes. But I think my thing lately on the podcast is, if you're a young Australian and particularly you might be in Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, and Perth is a little bit of an interesting thing, as you'd know at the moment with property prices. But I'm really, like, personally, if I was back looking to buy my first home to live in, I don't think I would be going to get the principal place of residence. I think it is so savage out there. If you do want to own a property, I'm literally going to buy an investment property and seeing, a business like yourself to find an asset that could be a lower price, to have that debt, because we need debt to get into property. That's deductible debt, and then we just rent somewhere, and that's really hard. But I would say I own several properties, and many Australians do, not as many as people think if you look at the actual data. However, I don't live in my principal, like I rent. I'm a rent investor. Because I just
preaching to the choir.
I don't know. Because it's so expensive, and $1 million mortgages and all this, $800,000 mortgages, that's a lot of debt to carry. So I've taken the view, and interestingly enough, for those that are like, I don't think I could rent and invest, something changes in your soul when you know you've got that property that's an investment, and you are actually building wealth. So you are making progress. So it takes the sting out of renting. But look, it is a very complex and crazy place out there in rental markets around the world, and purchasing property.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the term rent vesting has become awfully popular, but I think outside of the common theme of, invest where you should and live where you want, the other factor is that the transactional costs of buying and selling real estate here is so expensive. So if you're going to be, buying a property, then you might get some growth in it over the next couple of years, but you're only going to sell that owner-occupied to have to upgrade again. Those buying and selling costs, every time you're selling, you're buying in the same market. And, by rent vesting, we have the opportunity to, leverage equity and continue to borrow, more money to buy more properties, and eventually we might be selling multiple properties to have that owner-occupier with much less debt.
Yeah, and I think society is changing, and I think one of the biggest social debates at the moment is this whole return to the office and all that stuff. But that aside, I think as a society, we are a little bit more fluid with our job and our career. And I really think if you're a young person that wanted to get established, then you did have a passion for buying a property, and that's awesome. If you did some investing elsewhere, rented where you want to, it does actually free you up a little bit to take different opportunities, because you're not tied down to a physical location. And, I've always said the best investment that you can make first is in yourself and in your career. So look, it is tough out there, and I'm not a property guy. I'm a personal finance generalist. I'm like Dr. Carl on the ABC. Know a lot about a lot of things, but I really want to encourage people to get set. And I've just released the Glen James Reset, which is a free goal setting 2-hour online course to really get focused, to set your goals, and then plug the money into those goals. A lot of the time, people try and make financial decisions. It's like, I've got to buy a house, I've got to buy an investment property, I've got to invest in shares. And they lead with the financial decision. But we have to lead with our lifestyle decision and our lifestyle goals, and then plug the money into that.
Absolutely. So Glenn, I want to take a step back to something you mentioned earlier around the goal planning. I listened to one of your podcasts either at the start of this year or towards the end of last year that really talked about your setting up of goals, and how if you were to articulate those goals to somebody else, you're going to be held more accountable to them. Could you share some of the statistics that were around those goal planning objectives?
I can, and don't quote me because it's early and I'm halfway through my first copy, but there is up to around 80 to 90% chance, and this is freely publicly available information, everyone, if you have a plan, write down goals, have them in writing, have some accountability. Now, we don't want to, and I went into detail around accountability in the accountability module on the Glen James Reset, but because you don't want to say to somebody, oh, hey, I want to buy an investment property, and they say to you, oh, don't do that, that's too scary, and they end up making you not do it, but it's only because they're not in that level. So if you're going to get some accountability, make sure it's someone who's further down the line from you and who understands those risks. But We know the data says those who write down goals and have a plan, there's over 80% chance that that will be achieved. And I think that's the whole thing. We can think about buying a property, we can have a dream to buy a property, but unless it's some written goals, it's just a wish, it's just a dream.
Yeah.
And by writing down our goals, we don't need a 15-page manifest of our goals, but it could just be like, let's work backwards. In 18 months, well, we can save X amount a month. We're going to work backwards, get our deposit, and then open real estate, then see the buyer's advocate. One thing I would say as well with goals, a lot of people, they'll have we want to save for a wedding, we want to buy a car, we want to buy a new house, we want to do all this stuff, we want to go to Prague.
They're open-ended without a timestamp. We need to have a deadline for those goals.
That's right, but also we have to live in reality. And if we're just starting out our life and our career, we can't have it all right now. So pick the one that's going to add most value to your life and put all your energy behind that and make it your financial reason for living to attack that goal. Every time you're at the shops, I love Bunnings, I'm a recovering bunny holic or whatever. When I'm at the counter, I need to say, does this purchase move me closer towards my goal or further away? No, I don't need a 300 pack of batteries. No, I don't need 5 watering cans. I didn't come in here wanting that. So we have to be mindful and present with our goals. And if that goal is property, sure, there might need to be a bigger sacrifice, but often what we find, those who sacrifice the most will often get the results.
I think that's very wise advice, Glenn. Finally, for anybody listening today that might take advantage of some of your free courses, where would be the best place that they could get that advice?
Yeah, so it's all on our website, moneypodcast.com.au, and we've got the Glen James Spending Plan, we've got the Glen James Reset, we've obviously got the podcasts, and what I tell people is, if you listen to this interview today and you're like, oh, I'm overwhelmed, what do I do? Well, what's one thing that you can take away from that? So don't get overwhelmed, go slow, it's okay, and one thing at a time, and you'll be fine. Turn off the noise of everyone saying you need to buy 15 properties by the time you're 40. Shut up, go away, this is what we're doing.
Amazing. Well, Glenn, thank you so much for joining us. And for everybody out there, make sure you check out the Money, Money, Money podcast. That's the play for today. This is Ticker. We'll be right back.
You're watching Ticker. We'll have more in just a few minutes.